Oh,
Oh, look, it's time for a very special little Bring It In Trip Zoom show from quarantine, where we're going to be joined by a logo-faced Judy Goodwin. How are you, Judy?
good morning, everyone.
Good
If I
morning.
had known, I would have put on makeup and then I wouldn't, I wouldn't be logo face, but this is better for everyone. Trust me.
For the betterment of the show, though, Judy asked a fascinating question in our little warm-up period, and she's going to repeat it now. And we're gonna unspool mastery, Judy, and answer to your question. You ready for this?
Well, so I'm like kind of not a hardcore NBA fan. I'm sort of new to it, and so I now have listened to all the Bring It Ins and read all the articles, and I'm kind of like alarmed that we aren't talking more about how violent the game has become with the new rule changes. And I'm worried for our boys. And then I guess I want to know more. I want to understand why and why we are sort of, I don't know, it seems like we're not critical enough, or no one seems worried enough about this. So please tell me that I don't need to be worried and everything's going to be okay.
Oh, worry, for sure, worry. But before we really dig in, though, I will just note, I just looked it up this morning. This is one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. There are 13, 15 players in every team. There are 30 teams. Today, there are more than 100 players, about a third of the league, on the injury report because of musculoskeletal injuries or COVID protocols or other things too. Mental health reasons to be out. But yeah, there's no argument that no one's going to get hurt here. Like a third of the league is hurt, right? All right, so David, you were starting to answer Judy's question a minute ago. You want to pick up where you left off?
Yeah, I think that if just think these guys are human beings, and if you keep getting bumped in real life, like at some point you're going to say, "Back the fuck up," quit hitting me. And in previous years, where referees are calling a tighter whistle, as we would phrase it, at least you're getting 2 free throws out of it, or sideline out of bounds if it's before bonus, and it just isn't happening as much now. And I think that we've said this, John and I think talked about it a couple weeks ago. We're just seeing a little bit more acting out, which is based on, I think, a little frustration over just the general increased physicality of the game. The other aspect, which goes to your thing on injury, would be if you want to foul, which in some time score context you do, you can't foul as lightly as you used to be able to do and still get the whistle. You've got to come up with a little bit more effort, a little more physicalness. And when you see guys getting smacked on the hand, smacked on the arm, first of all, go ahead, feel free right now as you're listening to my voice and punch yourself in the top of your arm and see how that feels.
That is not our advice, listeners. That is not what we advise you to do.
Now imagine a super fit, strong man karate chops you right on those arms. It freaking hurts, right? And all the other ways you can get hurt too, or get fouled. And so, yeah, I just think that it's increased the level of testosterone, but more importantly, probably a level of frustration when you don't get what you want because it hurts a little bit more. Again, these are human beings. I am not worried, Judy. I do think we need to pay attention to it. If it just keeps increasing, I think that's an issue. And here would be my scary scenario is normally we see, in my opinion, referees in the postseason allow a little bit more contact than they do during the regular season. If that happens starting now, going into the postseason, well, now we're getting into even more levels of physicality and heightened tension and drama of a playoff series. And then I think we could have, I'm not predicting Malice in the Palace, but I certainly think there could be more fights or more physical violence in just a moment or two, like we've seen Jokic do. And I think there's been one or two other pretty aggressive fouls. I don't want that. I like the fluid part of the game, but I don't want that kind of violence. That's for sure.
There's a little bit of a we're wrestling with replay, right? Like, so it used to be that referees called however they called it, and no one could ever see it again, and everyone assumed the referees were pretty good. And then around the time of Tim Donaghy, everyone got TiVos and DVRs and could see like the referees were making mistakes all the time. And so now the league has to invent a new way to call the game. And it got pretty strict, right? It got to be, there were a lot of free throws, and free throws are terrible for the ratings, right? This is a very boring part of the TV show. It makes the game too long and people don't want to stay up till 1:00 in the morning, see the end of the West Coast game, etc. So, and in addition to that, a few players, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, James Harden, like got really good at just getting the free throw line a ton with trickery, right? Like, and so I think the stated goals this offseason were to reduce the effectiveness of trickery, some moves that David could describe. But in addition to that, they also just kind of made it so that when Dwight Howard checks in the game, he just runs around and freaking just wails on everybody, and they call like a third of them. It's like practically every play hits somebody really hard. And I think that might be the kind of thing that leads
Okay, but
to,
so like real talk question. When I watch basketball games now, I watch it and wince way more. Like as a not passionate super fan, there's a new element to it that I find worrisome. That's similar to like when I watch hockey or football, where I'm like, those poor boys are really beating themselves up. Is there like a part of fandom that's just like into that? And this is sort of giving into it?
Totally. Yes, absolutely. It's really sick. It's weird. I never get it, but like it, and there's even like, I wrote a story once about a guy, an academic wrote a paper about the superhumanization of Black bodies, right? So the idea is that white and Black people in big numbers kind of agree that Black bodies are invulnerable, superhuman, if you will. And it's a weird deal. Like it creates a very terrible racist effect, right? Where when LeBron says, ouch, that hurts, people are like, shut up, just go fly around the court.
Possibly, right?
Yeah. Meanwhile,
but also, when you say Henry, also to Gerard's point in the chat, he wrote Americans Love Violence. I think humans. I mean, we can go throughout history and look at what happened. We didn't invent hockey. And to Judy's point, I never watched hockey when fights were normal. And as soon as I see a fight break out, the rare time I have the lightning on, I'm right off it. I could not be less interested. I don't like wrestling for that matter either, professional wrestling. It's not real and it's just stupid. I hate it all. Football is barbaric as hell. But I want to circle back to how Henry started this and just what you said now. We need to protect our athletes, period. We need to protect our athletes, period. So I'm all for, and this is not for the subject today, it's a different topic. I'm all for dropping free throws altogether and changing our game that way. But there has to be an enormous penalty for pounding someone. You're not supposed to foul. It's bad defense almost always. We need to make it where it's always bad defense. Just like in football, you should never hold on either side of the scrimmage. It really can fuck up a play, a game, and a season just because of penalties. We need to make it really bad to foul and not necessarily have someone shoot free throws where we lose viewers to their phones or whatever, and also not put these bodies at risk. They're already at risk enough because of the schedule they play.
Oh yeah, it's super dangerous. It's a super dangerous game. Speaking of that, I spent part of yesterday listening to CJ McCollum. What a hero. President of the Players Association has a collapsed lung. It remains collapsed. He's about to start what you call a respiration therapy, I think he calls it. But nevertheless hosts his freaking podcast like a couple of days afterwards, and he explains what happened, which was you were asking about this, David. He basically got hit in the ribs twice in the game. Didn't, neither one took him out of the game, but he was in some pain, and then in the minutes to follow that, he started having shortness of breath. And then when they pulled him from the game on his regular rotation, he went straight to the locker room and was like, something's wrong. Then the x-rays were negative. They're like, you're fine. And so they started just doing the therapy for like a bruised rib. And then later that night, he got a call that he had a partially collapsed lung. And so he's out indefinitely. But this is the kind of thing, this is exactly the kind of thing you'd worry about with a more violent league, right?
I know of at least one player that I helped years ago who wore like a special, it wasn't a bulletproof vest. It wasn't a flak jacket. I think they call it, the NFL quarterbacks wear that special, but it was something. It had some kind of protection. And I've been in many locker rooms. I've seen other players, including like big, strong guys, wearing that kind of rib protection. You could have a big, strong core. The player that I was coaching didn't, he was thin and he got fouled a lot, and it was his only way to protect his body.
Yeah.
And we don't, it's not ideal for our guys to do that.
Ribs aren't tough. They just aren't, right? Like that part of you is sensitive. Like it just, right. And it's hard to call fouls down there too, right? It's not like when they hit you on the wrist, everybody sees it, but when they hit in the ribs, like
right. That's what I was going to say, Henry, to something Judy was saying earlier too. The reality is most of the most physical contact, y'all aren't seeing it.
Yeah.
Maybe you, Henry, a little bit because you played pickup, but it really is something you have to, just like an iceberg, most of the iceberg the majority of the iceberg is underwater, right?
Yeah.
The majority of the violence is happening in the paint, in close contact, and the camera just doesn't see it.
When they slow-mo it, a lot of times I'm like, whoa,
right.
It's so dirty. Right.
It is not a skinny man's game down there. I mean, you have skinny men that are great for sure, but they're not soft if they're going to be great, because it's a violent sport in more ways than one.
And in pickup basketball, without a referee, there are a lot of advantages, right? Like there's no tricking the referee, right? Like without a referee. So if someone in the NBA, you might get away with shoving someone while they're shooting the ball, right? In pickup, you would never get away with it because the person who you shoved felt it and gets to call the foul, right? So in a way, it's better, but nevertheless, there are fights in pickup basketball. It happens, right? Like it is for exactly the same reason. So to me, the NBA is in this weird space where they have a low number of fights, a very low number of fights, to be honest, like almost none, but a little bit more this year compared to basketball everywhere else, right? But they have a business interest in making sure that like they don't turn off, frankly, white fans who see NBA violence as a much worse kind of violence than baseball violence or hockey violence, right? It's a business problem for the NBA to have fights. So they're in this kind of zero tolerance thing, whereas maybe 1% tolerance is like a little more realistic. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's takes too much intelligence for what I have. I do like the goal. That. I do like the goal of never fighting. I will. I did a bad job when I was in my 20s coaching inner city kids who were used to violence, and I allowed a rule: if you got hit in the head, you could go after the guy's head, and you just had to tell your team, because I didn't care if you did it; we were going to do it head for head. But I was 22 years old. I quickly realized I need to be better than that.
It's very Old Testament.
I literally quoted the Bible all the time, and I hate the Bible and all religions. But I said, eye for eye, we're head for head. You come after our head, we're coming after yours. And they were all into that. But when I started preaching about we can be better than that, let's just beat their motherfucking ass, that worked so much better. Didn't mean we didn't set bone-crushing screens. We had a little thing right here. When we did this, it meant set your man up. Here comes our biggest dude, and screen the motherfuck out of that guy in the shoulder or in the hips, right? We're not going for heads, but it was a good reminder. And we're going to try to beat you by 50 also. And it was a way better way to do it. But you don't want these guys. These are grown-ass men who could really hurt you or be hurt. Like also, you punch someone's head and you're going to break a finger. And we don't want any of that. Again, the sport's already dangerous enough.
Yeah. The hands point is a good one too, right? Like, your hands are so delicate and important. Like you just, all right, we have so much to talk about today, David. This is probably the most we've ever had to talk about. I guarantee we have prepared segments of this show, which will never be delivered to the public. So I guess we should get cracking. Also, I think this is probably the first show in the history of the world which has Robert Maxwell and Eric Spoelstra's wrinkle in the offense, right? Like no one's ever put those together before, but we're going to do it. I kind of want to jump right away quickly. I was in Atlanta last week and got to do a tour of the new Overtime Elite facility, which we've talked about. We had Zach Wiener, the president of Overtime, on the show. David, it's beautiful. It's the highest ceiling I've ever seen. And I've been to cathedrals in Europe, it's like this huge ceiling. I know this is your favorite part of the whole deal is we happen to be walking in at about the time that practice starts. Let me figure out, I think that was maybe, I want to say 10 a.m. practice starts. And there are 27 high school aged players in the program. Some of them are already well into their warm up, shooting with coaches, doing all kinds of stuff on the court. Most of them. Some of them are in the trainer room. And there's a countdown clock that's everywhere. It's on the court. I think it's in the training room too. It's just like how many minutes till practice starts.
Yeah, that's
And,
common.
Yeah. But then there's a moment where it's, 15 seconds to practice starting, and there's a guy leaving the training room and he only has one shoe on. And everyone's like, I forget his name, like hustle, 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 and I'm like, and 10 people are hollering, cajoling, but in a warm, loving, supportive way. And he kind of like, he ends up just booking with only one shoe on onto the court and then putting a shoe on once he's on the court. But I guess the fear was that this would be kind of loosey-goosey, indulgent. The players make money and they're going to lose discipline or something, whatever America's fear was with Overtime Elite. But I'm here to tell you, like, they're showing up on time for practice. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. Listen, I could spend an hour on this and we don't have an hour. So let me just say this. I'm all for the players getting paid. Let's just remove that from the discussion because you can get paid and should be getting paid in college too. When I first heard about this, and I've had a phone meeting with them after we did our Zoom call, or bring it in. I keep thinking about Dr. Malcolm from Jurassic Park, played by Jeff Goldblum in the movie, who's a chaos theory guy. And he said, you were so excited that you could do it, you forgot about thinking about whether or not you should do it.
Mm-hmm.
And all I want to say on that subject is, and I was talking to Judy about this before the show a little bit, I think parenting young people is the hardest thing humans can ever try to do, including trying to get to space. It's really, really hard. And I loved my children. They were our blood, my wife and I. We tried as best we could. And I don't know that we did a great job. I think we did okay at least, but it was so flipping hard. And I've had a hand in raising hundreds of other children, boys almost exclusively, but not entirely, where I see them for a couple, 3 hours a day, which is about as much as their parents see them when they're in high school. And these people are trying to raise children because they're not college kids, 24 hours a day. It's just really, really hard. You made a really brilliant comment to me this morning, Henry, when you said they might do it better than college. You're absolutely right. I just want to make sure everyone recognize what they need to recognize, and I think they do. It's going to be the hardest thing they've ever done. Forget making the money is a whole separate thing. Making money for the players, making money for them and the investors. It's a whole separate thing. We're talking about human beings and raising them. And it's just really, really hard. And the other thing I'll add is college should be so much more about the next step to the NBA, except for a few people. And I do believe there are some players that are built to be NBA players in terms of in their minds, and then their bodies match, and that's all they want. And I'm all for it. Just like a child actor can do the same thing, and on and on. Steve Jobs can quit, and Bill Gates can quit college after a year. These athletes should have the same right and privileges. But it's also could be the best 4 years of your life. And especially if you're an athlete and they're not going to get that chance potentially. Doesn't mean they shouldn't be doing it. We don't know yet. It's too early to know. I think we should try it and see what happens. I think
we're going to talk about Overtime Elite for years, and I'm excited to do that. One thought I had, though, was, we talk about it compared to the NCAA, but we're, 15 years into that being done as the only model, right? I think Overtime Elite might be replacing like the LaMelo Ball program of going to Lithuania. Where'd you go? Lithuania and Australia, right? Like, and compared to that program, or indeed in the Overtime Elite program right now, are a large number of international players who last year played for a different pro program.
Right. They're used to it. Right.
Right. So like, it's an American wrinkle on what Unicaja Malaga has been doing for a long time, right? It is the European model, right? Where pro teams hire you when you're young and develop you in the hopes of profiting from you in the meantime. The difference here is, and this is what actually the other thing is, okay, I had I couldn't even understand what's happening in me. I had like sort of an epiphany kind of moment when I was doing my little tour. So downstairs is the beautiful training facilities. Upstairs are classrooms, business offices, and then you walk into the arena. This is like the broadcast arena. I think it's the first facility ever built in the world to make like video first basketball. So if you line up outside in the middle of Atlanta and wait for a ticket, I think it's free or cheap. You can sit in the front row. You can sit anywhere. They're not making money in-person people at all, right?
Right.
But up in the corner, there are cameras installed everywhere. Up in the corner is a booth where a team of producers they found on TikTok are making like their core product, which is like a 20-ish minute documentary that comes out, you know, it lags, you know, a month or two, what's happening in real life. The first one hasn't been published yet. Okay, it strikes me like this is kind of a dream, right? Where in the 2010, 2011 lockout, I remember I could probably find it somewhere in the archives. Basically, the players seriously considered leaving to start their own league, right? Forget the NBA.
Yeah.
And the idea then was like the broadcast is worth way more than the stadium revenue. And like, but you need a really nice place to broadcast it from. Like the bubble was one attempt at life without the stadium, right? But it's not quite what we wanted, right? We didn't get to see them in their hotel rooms. We didn't get to feel like we're in the documentary with them, right? But this building was built to create exactly that. And so to me, Overtime Elite is insistent they're not competing with the NBA and that their Super Bowl is when those players make it to the NBA. And David Stern's son is an investor. Like, you know, there's all kinds of reasons to believe that they want to work in cahoots with the NBA. But if there is a lockout, I know where LeBron can go to make a hell of a lot of money because Overtime is already built to make money from basketball players playing, you know, going to live in their dorms and being a little bit on camera. Like they already have the business model for what could be the players only NBA.
Yeah. So, I mean, all that's correct. I focus on, and I had a talk with Messiah about this years ago when he first started going to Africa. If you're only taking the cream of the crop to begin with, and then seeing who bubbles up from that, you're missing the point. You've got to cast as wide a net as possible for lots of different reasons. So now let's talk about this specific thing in Overtime Elite. The best, I haven't studied their games recently. I think they're probably on Synergy or on YouTube. I'm sure there's lots of ways to get video, as you were talking about. There's going to be some alphas, right? There's some top guys. Those other guys who don't quite make it would be the kings of the castle wherever they were playing in high school. And now they already have to learn to be a role player and they're 16 years old. It may help them down the road. It also may not help them. There's also a lack of joy. Some of these guys can learn to be the stars. And then the other part is we know what sells on YouTube. You know what doesn't sell? Screen assists. Rudy Gobert leads the league every year in screen assists. And that's a huge factor in him being one of the best players on the planet at 7 feet tall. Alex Caruso would not do great in Overtime Elite. I'm not criticizing Overtime Elite.
No, but we don't know. Right?
Well, he would get a lot of steals probably, yeah, but he's not that guy. Yeah, we have to see it. They're allowed to evolve too. They're allowed to evolve, and I think it's cool if it becomes a league. I also think we shouldn't make these kids not be able to play college basketball. That's the very first change that has to come. Get paid your money, and if you don't make it to the NBA right away, the G League, go play in college. And then that's the biggest downside I see that should be removed. These guys should be allowed to play in college. So what, they made money in high school? What does that matter? Whether they were working at McDonald's or playing basketball, what does it matter?
I mean, they're professional players, right? They have agents in many cases. Like, you know, you're also then letting players in from the European pro leagues and
fine. I mean, just have an age limit.
Yeah.
They're getting paid a lot of times anyway under the table. That's all. So let's just say, who cares?
I mean, I think
college care.
College cares because they're selling a myth, right? Like,
exactly. Let's break that myth up. I'm with you.
Right, but then they can't make money anymore.
Oh, because they have to pay the players so much?
No, because the myth is that, like, if I go to the University of Kentucky, the myth is that the star, like Julius Randle, is just like me, right? That's why people are so excited to support Kentucky and they don't like the NBA, right? Because those people don't love the game like Julius Randle does because he's a student just like me, right? That's why I paint the colors on my face and go, But if he's a visitor for a year or two and doesn't really go to classes and makes a bunch of money, he is not a student just like me. And he will never be the alumni just like the alumni. He won't generate the kind of donations. He won't generate the kind of support, right? Like there's a mythology. This is the primary way that you build the mythology of the university, which is that like warriors go here, right? And like, it's always been a lie, but you know, those guys have been getting paid, but like once it's clear they're getting paid, it's just like having a movie being shot on campus. It's like, you don't feel like like Bruce Willis was in Die Hard 2 during my time at NYU. They're filming it there, but I didn't feel like Bruce Willis was like me. He's a fucking movie star. You know what I mean? Like that's what it is like if you pay the players. This is coming anyway to college campuses, but this is why the NCAA can't go with your program, because they need students. This is why they call them student athletes, so that students feel like they're part of the same experience with the students, you know?
I think it's more because they don't want to pay them. And so by calling them a student athlete, they've been able to not have to pay them. I'm not arguing with you because I don't know, but I like to experiment and see. I still think students would go, and it's not even the student money that they need. They need the alumni to go pay, to donate and to go to games, and maybe they won't. Yeah,
those are locked, David. Like I don't know. There's like weird cult around like I will support this honest amateur program, and I don't like these lazy overpaid professionals, right? Like
right, but
too past a version of wood in the minds of fans, right?
Right, but back in the day, the Kentucky players, I know for a fact, were getting like, and one very famous player was driving a pink Cadillac, and he told me to my face how he got that pink Cadillac, and everyone knew it. You said this a little bit. They maybe the average fan doesn't know, but the average Kentucky fan knew what they were doing, and they still were. Big Blue was everything.
Yeah, but the difference between everyone and everyone is huge, right? Like, you know, so 500 people knew, but you know,
not
50, you might get 5 million watching a weekend game, right?
Yeah.
And that's
it isn't. I get you. It's a risk, but that's what I'd like to see. Is I'd like to tear that myth down, but whatever. The bottom line is, I'm glad they're trying things. There's lots of ways to develop players. And I have no right or privilege to suggest that someone else's parents shouldn't send their kid for this. I wouldn't do it for mine unless they insisted, but they can't insist till they're 18. So while I'm not 18 to live in my house, but that's just me. That doesn't mean another family shouldn't have the same opportunity. And I'm glad that they do. And I think it's a worthwhile venture to look into. A lot of smart people are investing into it and working at it. I think it's one of the ways we can create more and better players.
It's I came away thinking I talk about it way more in the future, but it's complicated stuff. We'll see. We'll see if it's an advancement in player development, right? Yeah. Like we don't know anything about it yet. What it definitely is an advancement in sports media, right? Like all those meetings I went to with the NBA and ESPN talking about innovating how they broadcast the game and what they do is to reach a younger audience, and F on everything, guys. Like F on everything. They didn't innovate shit, like nothing. And that made a huge opening, and over time just drove a bus into it, and they're parked there and they're never going to leave. And like, so this is the future of sports media. Like, maybe it'll be also involved with player development. I don't know, but well, not just I'm telling you, the next time there's a lockout, I'm telling you the next time there's a lockout, like 10 all-stars are going to move into that building. And they're going to start making money day one. Yeah. And why will they ever leave? Right. Yeah. Like they're going to reach our kids way better than the NBA ever did. And anyway, there you go. As long as we're on sorted shit, let's talk about Steve Bannon for a second, shall we?
I'm all for it.
All right. So we published a story last week. It's funny. It got a very interesting response in private. If you haven't read it yet, please do. I know these stories are complicated, but let me just set up this one a little bit. Okay. Ghislaine Maxwell is on trial right now. And I've been following it fairly closely, and I'm amazed the trial is not about money. Jeffrey Epstein was reportedly close to her dad, Ghislaine Maxwell's dad, Robert Maxwell. He was a world leader in setting up systems to move money in opaque ways. The Kremlin, Iran-Contra, Robert Maxwell worked with all kinds of people on this, and it has been widely reported with intelligence agencies, likely from multiple countries. Okay. Near the end of his life, in the late 80s and early 90s, Robert Maxwell died in 1991. He did a lot of business with two banks, Credit Lyonnais and Goldman Sachs. Also doing business with those two banks in those exact same years was Steve Bannon. Long before Breitbart, long before he was seen as that kind of guy, he was a banker. Meanwhile, the NBA's most important source of cash, Apollo Global, was founded with money from that exact same French bank, Credit Lyonnais, during that exact same period in the last year of Robert Maxwell's life. And look what happens. Fast forward a couple decades, Epstein has hard to explain ties to Apollo Global, whose founder, Leon Black, reportedly paid Epstein $158 million from 2012 to 2017. And Epstein also has hard to explain ties to Steve Bannon. In 2019, Steve Bannon, who has a whole tricky history around anti-Semitism. There's a great New Yorker story by Connie Brooke, which you should read about on that topic. Steve Bannon ends up being the person hanging out with reputed Mossad agent Jeffrey Epstein and former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, coaching Jeffrey Epstein to rehab his image in the media. What? It doesn't make sense to me, right? So to me, if we want to understand what's happening in this decade in Ghislaine Maxwell's trial, we probably need to go back a few decades, follow the money. It looks to me like we're living in the hangover of one of Robert Maxwell's many money schemes. Go ahead, David, your thoughts.
Yeah, I was just, I mean, I asked you to put this in here today. It's just the way you connect all the dots, and it's all just so dark. And we're faced now as a country with Steve Bannon is going to probably go to jail for contempt of Congress because it's a shorter jail sentence than what the crimes he actually did commit. He's just using the easier penalty if he ever goes.
Yeah, maybe these guys, there's a certain bunch of these dudes involved in this story who act around like authorities as if there's no authority at all, right? Like Eric Prince, Steve Bannon, like they acknowledge no fear or, you know, like literally Steve Bannon's walking out of the courthouse having been charged with explaining that the big lie, basically saying that, you know, how dare he be charged, right? Like he's back to leading the insurrection. It's a way to act that I associate a little bit with people with intelligence ties, to be totally honest. Like I think he's acting like he feels protected, right? Yeah. Randy says there's always one idiot who goes to jail. My bet is Meadows. Yeah. All right. Okay. We have some legit basketball to get into here. David, you had an interesting idea about coaching in a pandemic. Talk about that.
Yeah, well, we're seeing now, I think the Bulls have 10 positive cases now, at least 10. Who knows what it's staff members, I mean players. The Wizards have at least one reported case. We're going to start, I think, based on what's happening in the country, not even including this much more transmissible variant, Omicron, that's here. And it's about to get really crazy. And probably if it's going to take over in Europe as they expect, it seems like it'll be the dominant one here. And we're going to lose lots of games in terms of players missed or games canceled. But my thing is, if you have a team that's got a lot of veterans that have played together a while and they really are in sync, but you start sprinkling in call-ups from the G League or guys that were never playing before but need to because guys are in protocol and out, you don't have that synchronicity anymore. And so you can't just say, well, maybe you switch that screen and maybe you don't. You guys figure it out. You can't do that with guys that are just now bubbling up for the first time from the G League or from the waiver wire or just deep in your rotation, because they won't know what to do. They don't have that feel. Basketball is jazz. There is that connection. And that's on both ends. We're going to see more mistakes when there's more ambiguity to the jazz. It needs to be a little bit more like classical music. It needs to be a little more constricted and constructed and patterned so that there's a sense of the confidence of I know exactly what we're supposed to do in these situations. In a sense, you're removing feel. And so I think that teams like the Warriors that are very, very exact on defense of what they want to do. Offensively, a little bit different, as far as I know. Defensively, they're much more clear-cut in what they want to do, much more concise with the rules. I think they're going to have a better time adjusting to new guys that have to come in. And the teams that are more figure it out because you guys are all smart, they're going to struggle.
So basically the idea is, hey, guy, we just signed earlier this morning from the G League. Like, here are your instructions, right? You want to make it modular and simple and like
follow all these rules and you're good.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we'll win the game, but at least we'll all be on the same page. If you go somewhere where they kind of leave it up in the air, and when I tell you this, there are lots of programs. I'm not sure what the percentage is, but it's 30% plus, I would bet, where there's a lot of figure it out. You guys figure it out, solve it. Mm-hmm. And that's empowering. But it's empowering when you have 82 games to figure it out with your teammates, not so much when you're with a guy that you may never play again in 10 days. Mm-hmm. Then it's problematic, and that's what we're going to see.
No, this is like, I respect the hell out of this. Like, you know, I've been a manager of, you know, brilliant people. Like, my management gets to be pretty easy when like people can solve every problem themselves.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Like, but I would notice, like, because I've had those responsibilities, I notice when like overhear them onboarding the new waitress at the restaurant, and I'm like, look, they have like a system for like, by week 2 you're going to be here, by week 4 you're going to be here, by week 8 you're set free, right? Like, I love that. You're kind of saying we want a little bit more of those teams. Like, do you remember your guy Mike Moreau went to visit the Thunder, and he was like saying how everything was completely organized, right? Like how you get from the airport to the gym, like all of that stuff, right? That's kind of what you're talking about.
100%. Yeah, they did it on the court and off. Actually, I think we need it off the court too. I tweeted yesterday, the NBA needs like a 10-day timeout, and let's figure out the storm is coming. The Omicron storm is coming. How are we going to handle this? We don't want to lose any games. Let's figure out a protocol that works for all 30 teams, all of our staff. We did the bubble. I'm not saying do the bubble. How can we make sure, like, for example, everyone should be vaccinated. That's done. We already know that. And we're pretty good. I think 95+%. I think CJ McCollum said that the other day. It's pretty.
He said 98 or 99.
Okay. So it's fucking great. So, but they should be, I tell you this, I had conversations yesterday and today with 2 NBA players where I flat out told them no indoor dining right now for you. If you lived in Florida with 80 degrees every day, eat outside all you want, but you can't in most of the country. So get your food and bring it back home. Otherwise, wear a mask. In other places, you can't eat and wear a mask. So don't go in there and eat. Like, be safe. Don't spread it. Don't get yourself. Don't spread it. We need to be telling all of our players that. Every team should, and really try to get them to understand. Otherwise, it's going to be a bad winter, I think.
I did notice. So interestingly, there is not a place that reports how many players are out in COVID protocols, but there has been. We published a story on TrueHoop about it when Tom Haberstroh was here. And there's a link that's updated as of January 5th, which doesn't look
December
as
5th?
of that. What's that?
December 5th?
Sorry, December 5th.
Yeah. I was
so it's not much, right? Like, yeah, here you go.
Okay.
If you scroll a little bit down, Judy, you can see that right now the numbers are very manageable. But I think that if we get our next 8 days added to this, it might be a lot more just from the Bulls alone. And the Hornets. The Hornets had a lot of suspensions. All right, so we will keep an eye on that. Eric Spoelstra made a big adjustment. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I had watched them play this weekend, and I watched them on tape first on Synergy, and they're just letting the threes fly. They're running their pin down action. They're actually, I watched a G League game, one of my guy Ryan Panone's games, and he runs some good stuff, but he doesn't got Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero on his team. It's some guys that can really shoot, Max Strauss, and the Heat are just shooting a ton of threes, and they're on fire. When I say a ton of threes, they average 35 a game. They've shot 90 the last 2 games, and I wrote it down. They're 41 for 90. That's fire. When you're shooting that many, and they're hard to guard. That is not how they've been playing with Bam and Jimmy, 2 guys that don't shoot threes. Very, very smart by Spo to realize I'm in the game-winning business with this team. We're trying to get a top seed, and it's hard. The Nets and the Bucks and the Bulls were doing pretty good before all the COVID. We got to find a way to win with what we got. We're going to let that motherfucker fly. And I'm telling you, it is something to watch.
That's the guy. Suppose the same guy who went to his boss, Pat Riley, and said he wanted to start Shane Battier and play, with more threes and small ball. And Pat was like, I don't like it.
I like that voice. Yeah. No, I'm telling you, if I was a talented, I'm not a great writer either, but if I could tell a story on film, I would love to study how it is to guard a team like the Heat when they're on fire and they're looking to shoot threes. This is not just come down and chuck it. This is intricate screening and reading to get guys open, and everyone's a weapon. Almost everyone's a weapon because, again, Bam and Jimmy aren't playing, and it is the mindset of the guys defending those teams are just, it's hard because it's like everyone's Steph Curry in a way, and it's been really effective for Miami these last couple of games.
Well, and, people say, used to say live by the 3, die by the 3, but 41 threes over 2 games. I think that's 123 points, right?
Yeah.
Like over 2 games.
That's living. man, that's living.
You can do okay with that. Like, yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
the thing is, as we talked about this, as you stretch that defense because they're so panicked, well, you can go inside all you want.
Right.
Yeah. It's I give credit to that whole organization right now. They found a way when things look dark to just beat the Bucks and the Bulls. Now both teams were missing players, but still, you never apologize for a win. And there were blowouts. Well, not blowout. They beat Milwaukee, I think 8 or 10. They beat Chicago really badly.
All right. So David has a pop quiz. I'm going to read a top 10 list for an NBA stat, and then go in the chat and see if you can guess what the stat is. Ready? Number 1. Should I give the numbers, you think? Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 1 with 15 of this mystery stat, Kyle Lowry. Number 2 with 13, Blake Griffin. Number 3 with tied for third, Cody Martin and Derek White with 11. Number 5, big way tie, is Patrick Beverly, John Collins, Jayshawn Tate, all with 9. Number 8 is Kemba Walker, and tied for 9th is Montrezl Harrell and LeBron James, both with 7. What stat is that? There you go.
When you give numbers, you can guess it's Chargers because they're small. But to me, what's amazing is Lowry's on it, no surprise. Blake Griffin, how about that for a guy that used to be such a premier scorer? Pat Bev, of course, is on it. John Collins, Kemba Walker, LeBron James.
They're well-paid people.
Huh?
They're well-paid.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And in the case of Kemba, pretty slight.
Yeah.
But seeing LeBron on that really got me. The other ones got me a little bit too. Not Lowry and Blake. Blake's been doing it though. He did it last year too. I mean, Blake Griffin, by the way, and I know Gerard will talk to Nets, but I don't know if he'll be around come into the season. I don't think he's doing so great, but he's trying. But LeBron, I think, remember, LeBron's got 7 in very few games.
Yeah.
He's missed a lot. So this is the genius of LeBron finding ways to win a game.
Well, there's something too, I feel like the game's a little more violent as we open the show discussing, and the force with which people are attacking the rim seems to be a little bit up, which makes this more available, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm wrestling with my guy, I beat him, and then here I go with the rim, and then there's someone with their 2 feet carefully outside the charge circle.
They should stop. It's one of my biggest pet peeves as coaches. Why are you running a guy over? I don't understand. Quit running him over. If they make a bad call and the guy clearly blocked, that's not your fault. But most of these charges, there really are charges. Quit doing it. Just stop and pop or pass away or fake and pivot. Like, you have options, but running over is a bad move.
Yeah. No, I feel like I can see that, right? There's like, they start to get a step on the guy here, and they're like, I'm about to make Sports Center, right? Like, you get predetermined that you're gonna just hammer that thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I would love to talk quickly about DeMar DeRozan. He is out in the code protocols and on CJ McCollum's podcast. So we have 2 guys who are out, right? Like, one guy out with a collapse lung, one guy with code protocols, doing a podcast together. But what a great guy. Like, DeMar's such a great guy. And at one point, CJ is talking about his candidates for coach of the year, and DeMar like cuts him off to say Billy Donovan. Like, that's pretty cool. And then they're talking about MVP candidates, and CJ is saying he thinks DeMar is an MVP candidate, and DeMar cuts him off to say Steph Curry. He's like, what Steph's doing is incredible. And then there's a little part of like, how is DeMar able to have such a good year this late into his career? And he immediately started talking about, he had, I think, I want to say 9 years in Toronto.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. And he knew he could score athletically, basically. And then 3 years in San Antonio, during which Coach Popovich pulled him aside every day with something like, today you're going to be point guard. Why don't you look at this? And like, let's do this in the first quarter, set up that in the fourth quarter. Why don't you move the defense in this way? And just, DeMar's basically, it's not for everybody. It was difficult, at times frustrating, but he kind of got this, in addition to the tools he knew he had, he then kind of unlocked, that was his word, all of these other parts of his game where he can kind of learn some mastery of things to do off the ball and on defense, etc. And now he gets to go to Chicago with a lot of players he really enjoys playing with and put it all together, right? I thought that was kind of cool that he credited his former coach so readily.
I love that. I love it for a few reasons. One of them is, on a personal note, I used to do that as a high school coach with my best players, because I'm just trying to teach them the game.
Mhm.
And so I had a great post player who was a great high school, college player and a longtime pro. And I thought he'd be better at posting up if he had to play guard in the offseason and then he had to feed the post. And none of those guys were as open as him because he was 6'6", 300 pounds. So he had to feed a regular 6'6" skinny guy, 6'7" skinny guy. And he really learned the art of feeding the post. And that made him even a more effective post player as a receiver. And then I did it when I used to let my NBA guys pick up in the offseason. I would always have my elite scorers be point guard. I would always try to get my bigs playing more of the switch positions and have guards play down low. I've always believed you should learn all the games so you can play jazz everywhere. But the fact that DeMar, who's already such an accomplished player, allows himself to be coached, I think is really exemplifying what I know to be true, which is most of these guys, man, they just want to play really good basketball. And they don't care what you look like, what your reputation is. If you can help them win more games, they will appreciate you and pay you or listen to you or whatever. I don't know DeMar, but we have mutual friends who've just sworn by him, really, as a person. And I think I told you one story when a player wanted me to meet DeMar, and it was 1 a.m. in Vegas. I just had my last meeting over summer league, and he said he's playing craps. And I go to the craps table, and there's a bunch of NBA players, all veterans. They were there, I think, for Team USA, but DeMar was young. He was like on the select trying out team. He was on the team. And there were some veterans not on Team USA drinking cocktails at 1 a.m, which is fine. DeMar just had a bottle of water. And I don't think he was playing. He was standing. I'm not sure he was playing, but he was just drinking his bottle of water. And he was just I spent a few minutes with him. He was such a down-to-earth, pleasant young man. And the guy that introduced him to me that was my friend and player is a really good kid too. And he's like, this guy is just such a great guy. I just love that about him. And I love that he's having this season. Like, this should excite fans to know that you can go down a little bit and then maybe recover and get the right roster around him. And he does have that in Chicago. Billy Donovan is a great players coach. He really is. And also knows what he's doing as a coach. Like, he's not just a guy that formerly played, which he did. I was talking to an NBA player yesterday and I mentioned Billy Donovan and he had no idea he was a great college player. Like, that's how young these guys are. I said, yeah, he was on Pitino's first ever team at Providence when they went to the Final Four. Like, Billy was Billy the Kid. He was amazing. I just love DeMar for that. And I hope he gets back soon. I think he's out with COVID protocols, isn't he?
Yeah.
So it's not an injury. So hopefully he'll be back pretty soon.
Okay. There were 2 other little moments of that caught my attention. One was CJ mentions they overlapped in a hotel with the Bulls just for a minute. And CJ was like, you could really tell you guys are getting along, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, that's cool.
After openly talking about the Blazers being kind of a debacle this year, and I was like, oh,
Really?
the Bulls look pretty good. This other moment was, CJ's in a ton of trade rumors now, and he's openly talked about it. He's talked about it a bunch of places, but there was just a moment where DeMar was talking about how he still uses the mapping app to get from the airport to his house. He's new in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
And just for a second, CJ is like, oh my God, I didn't even think about that, right? Just for a second, he's like I thought about these other things, but yeah, oh my gosh, he's like, I know how to go to the airport when there's traffic and know when that one, like, he knows all the back roads, he knows all the places to get a meal late at night. And DeMar was like, I haven't even really been to a restaurant yet because of COVID and stuff, right? But anyway, I just thought that was, I really feel like we heard CJ having like a kind of moment of CJ's about to have a baby and he's got a collapsed lung and he owns a winery in Oregon and Neil's got fired and anyway, it feels pretty real, even though it's on the surface very friendly, everything under control, but you can feel there's a little human panic under that.
Yeah, I mean, I have a friend who just moved to Mexico to retire, and she's got to get she's a breast cancer survivor. She needs a new doctor. She needs to do everything. They're human beings like anything else, and their lives get turned upside down when they're traded.
Yeah. Gerard, Hector, would you like to join us as we pick from the bones of our well-prepared show where there's just so much we haven't gotten to?
I got a little KD thing in there too.
Yeah, you do. I think Gerard might be muted.
No, I'm good. Right.
Oh, there you go. Now we got you. Now we hear you. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Did you see the Pistons game?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Where he goes for 51. Harden didn't play.
No, they gave Harden rest for that game. They're trying to figure out strategic points in the season where they could give both guys rest.
They picked a good team to do it against.
Just because of the nature of how the season's going and, what this team has become, which is probably not what they thought they were going to be going into the season.
Right.
So Shams is reporting Kyrie may return.
I'm not going to refute Shams' reporting. Shams is well plugged in. I know that he's not returning text messages, so maybe he is. I don't know. Let's put it this way: it's Kyrie. Anything can happen, and I'd be like, "Oh, okay, sure."
But is it? And Sham doesn't know this. What do you think? Is it a relaxation of restrictions by the Nets?
No, the Nets aren't relaxing any restrictions.
They're not.
So that's why I'm like, I don't know about that, but okay.
Josiah was pretty strong. I forget exactly what he said. Maybe you remember.
In that Athletic article, yeah, like they're not. The best thing they did was able to say, okay, the facility in Brooklyn where they practice, the training facility, that's the one where you don't have to be because we'll give you some sort of, we'll make it whatever they did to make that allowable. But the Barclays Center itself, no. So what's the point, right? And they're not going to pay you to go. They're sitting him on the road, so he's got to get vaxxed. And with Omicron coming, there's no relaxation of any New York City mandates happening anytime soon.
Yeah, there was somebody checked with Eric Adams, and they were just like, "Oh no."
Yeah, he was like, "No, not happening." So I don't know. Maybe he's had a change of heart. I don't know.
Also, I think in that same Shams article, 76ers are ramping up their efforts to spark multi-team trade scenarios to move Simmons. Sources said, and a fresh pool of teams has emerged as potential destinations. The New York Knicks, Los Angeles Lakers, Minnesota Timberwolves, Portland Trailblazers, Sacramento Kings, Indiana Pacers, and Cleveland Cavaliers are among the teams interested in Simmons, sources said. How about that?
I mean, who wouldn't be, right? And of course, they're going to throw the Lakers name in there because they're going to generate a lot of buzz. But like, what do the Lakers even have that Philadelphia might want, right? Like, they're not giving them LeBron. That's not happening, right? Like, I don't think Daryl Morey wants Russell Westbrook.
I had to pause and think about it for a second.
Yeah.
Like,
But he doesn't want Russell Westbrook. And is Anthony Davis and Joel Embiid, does that work? Like, I don't.
Oh, that works, but I don't think that's what it would be.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think that's what it'd be. I don't think. Well, you never know, though. It is. I think they're all represented by the same agent.
Well, yes, Davis, and they're all Clutch guys. Yeah, sure. It's all part of the Clutch family. But I don't know. I do not know.
I have. Henry, what'd you think about my? I started thinking about who would Ben Simmons best pair with, and then the question Gerard just asked, which is, who do they have that the Sixers want? And I thought Ben Simmons would be unbelievable next to Nikola Jokic.
Mm-hmm.
And Jamal Murray's coming back in February. He does play the position,
right.
Although Tyrese Maxey's getting better. Murray's a hell of a common. And we know how good Murray plays with Jokic. Why would he not play great with Embiid? I thought that had some legs to it.
You guys know better than I do. I think Murray's too small of a chip piece for him, though. I think, but
So I thought him and Will Barton, but my point is he ain't getting Dame. Well, if he's not getting Dame, yes, Beal, Dame, like those guys are one level, but just below that, Jamal Murray's got all-star future and is an amazing postseason player. Bakers can't be choosy, and the Sixers are going to lose a year of Joel Embiid's health if they don't do something. They're just not going to be good enough without someone much better than what Ben Simmons. They'll miss him defensively. Although if you guys saw the Warriors game, Matisse Thybulle probably is the best pure wing defender, not two-way player. He's bad on offense, but he is incredible defensively, and he bothers Steph Curry as he would.
Thybulle's awesome. What's the thing you say all the time, Coach? Scoring over length is the most difficult thing to do in the NBA, right? Like, it's just hard. And
so quick too.
Thybulle's comments after the game were, look, the way I play defense is I can't think about Steph Curry scoring on me. Like, that's going to happen. Like, whatever. Like, I've just got to make sure every play that's the mindset. I know what my assignment is and what I got to do. And every time this is what I'm doing. He may score some, he may not score some, but it doesn't matter. This is my focus. And it was a great place.
He gets it.
So if Daryl's not going to trade Ben Simmons except for like a top flight player, and I'm sure he wants picks and pick swaps too, will he get that?
I don't know.
Is that how this is going to end?
I don't know that he can. Like, what's the name? It's Brad. It's Dame. It's
Who?
I think who else someone might want to move.
Right. That's why I said Jamal Murray. If that's the next tier, that might be the best you get.
I
And
mean,
you're trading
he's
him out
still
west, too.
obsessed with getting Harden, right? But like, does Sean Marks make that deal, right? Like, there's only so many people that exist that he can get.
That's interesting though, Gerard. That is interesting.
But then that's still, if you're Sean, that doesn't help them. That screws them up. Right? Okay, now, so maybe, or they go, we're leaning in one direction. Now we're going all the way defense, right?
Well, it makes him 6 years younger, which is huge.
Well, you could do Ben if you had Kyrie.
Yeah.
Right. But that's the thing that
Right.
What guarantee do I have that dude's playing?
Right. And I don't know if Omicron's the last variant. I mean, we might be dealing with this next year too. There's nothing happening in our country to make me think that there's going to be the high percentage of the population is going to get 3 vaccine doses and end the pandemic. You know, I have no faith.
Yeah, it's Ben would fit next to so many teams and so many players. Again, Daryl has his asking price, right? Like, and does he come off of it and come down to, all right, I'm not going to get an all NBA dude. What is the next thing I can get that works for me? I
think he might. I mean, I don't know who it is, but like Ben Simmons is excellent and young, and lots of teams. We only need one team to offer blue chip player, and I have to believe that somebody probably will. Or as a Blazers fan, right? Like the idea is like, no, take a CJ McCollum. He's got one perfectly good lung. And then Daryl's like, no, we'll take your Damian Lillard, right? I think this is the debate. Like, where does Ben Simmons slot in on Twitter? He's not even as good as McCollum, right? Like, but NBA front offices don't only use Twitter. You know what I mean? They also use advanced stats that include defense. And they're
real, Henry. Some of them only use Twitter. Some of the moves they do.
Hey, Gerard, I meant to ask you, I don't know what happened to KD cussing out that fan.
Oh, it's just normal KD stuff. Like,
but what did the fan do?
The fan said something and KD was like, sit down, mother effer. Like, it's just,
so not a big deal.
No, who cares? He does it all the time. Like,
I wish the fans wouldn't do that stupid shit though.
It's just like, well, that's one of KD's things, right? He's like, I don't understand grown men coming to a game to heckle other grown men. Like, that makes no sense to me. And I'm like, I get it. Like, it's stupid, but whatever.
Every stand-up comic has the same feeling.
Like, it's just stupid. Like, boo or whatever, but heckle, dumb. He was good last night though, in that Detroit game.
You think?
He did defensively too. Like, look, they're good on defense. Their numbers an adjusted defensive rating, which again, not what they thought they were going to be this season.
Right.
It's
credit Nash for that.
Yeah.
Adjust on the fly.
Did you see Nash's quote about Kyrie returning? I thought it was so good.
No.
He said something like, if we get the wonderful gift of his presence, like we will gladly accept it, But I thought it was so great. It kind of kept it like Kyrie's the best, but we're doing the work over here, right?
Yeah, it's like, we're
Henry, let's talk about the LeBron thing before we go. And Curry, you got 2 minutes.
Okay.
LeBron with the rest.
Shocking. You got rest, you play better. Weird how that works. I don't know. Who would have thought that happened?
LeBron said, I slept last night from 12 to 8. I got up, ate breakfast, and went back to sleep from 8:30 to 12:30. Like, what older person in a pandemic doesn't understand that? Like, that's a
Imagine if our athletes could get more rest, but they might
try to call my mom in those hours. She's not available.
And now he's the oldest all-time triple-double guy. Kobe had the record. Now LeBron has it. Yeah.
He's gonna have all the old man records.
Yeah.
You're right. Well, him and Kareem. Yeah. All right.
Wait, no, David. Blitz. Austin Reeves, go.
Austin Reeves. Oh, yeah. So the Lakers have this white dude that can't shoot, but he brings energy, and his off-court numbers off are great. I'm just wondering, he's a rookie.
The best on the team.
Yeah, you're right. He's a rookie. If they get Nunn back and Horton Tucker playing well, at least they've got some young guys, because Malik Monk looks like that's not working. The Lakers have something to be excited about with their rookie. It's been a while. Horton Tucker's got a chance, and now Reeves. It could be good.
He did it in a minute. Nice job.
Steph Curry.
Right.
What was Steph Curry?
Let's just kill a minute till Judy tells us we're too late. Let's just see.
He's going to break
He
the
hasn't-
record
he
next
hasn't
game or
said
two,
anything
right?
yet.
I mean, well, he's been pressing a little bit last few games, so we'll see.
Okay, look, it's time to go. All right. Thank you, Judy.
Sorry, Judy.
Thank you, David. Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody.
I
Let's see you on Friday.